ingredients pre-measured in the bowl. Going to whisk them together with just a standard egg whisk. Just blend the whole wheat flour and the bread flour and the salt together, just kind of to make it all mix up. And I'm using instant yeast, which requires that we mix it in with the dry ingredients and then add water to all of the dry ingredients. So I'm just going to whisk this in. If you are using active dry yeast, you'll dissolve active dry yeast in your water and then add it to the flour and salt mixture. Get this mixed up just so. Doesn't have to be completely perfect, but it just helps to get everything more or less distributed. Okay, that'll do. Now this is an 80% hydration dough that I'm making, which is arguably wet, but I have pre-measured my water. It is about 125 degrees Fahrenheit, which is what this instant yeast likes. So I'm just going to pour that in there. And with my dough whisk, just blend it all up. And it's going to be quite sticky and a good mess when we're done. Kind of fold it up and down to bring the dry ingredients off the bottom of the bowl. Press the whisk through the dough to kind of mix things up. And it's gotten quite sticky. Now you can make this dough with less hydration, 75 or even 70%. I like the 80%. Even though it's a little bit messier to work with, I think it's worth it for the moistness of the finished loaf and the really satisfying chew that it gives you. So there's our dough. Set this over here. Take our dredger and just flour the work surface and flour the hands. This will help prevent the dough from sticking to our hands while we knead. So there's the dough. So we'll make a mental note of the time. We're going to give this about 5 minutes worth of kneading. If it gets stuck to your hands, don't worry, just kind of do a little dry scrub. Get the little dough boogies off your fingers. A little more flour. Once you get this going, it should settle down nicely. So what we do is with the ball of our hands, we want to fold the dough ball over and then push through gently. You're not pushing down, you're pushing forward and through, just to roll the dough against the work surface. So fold, turn, and push. Doesn't have to be hard. If you're getting tired, you're doing it wrong. So just fold, turn, and push. Very gently, but firmly. See the moist dough is coming up from the inside and finding its way to the outside. So we're just gonna pick this guy up in our hand a little bit, sprinkle a little bit more flour on our work surface, and continue. Notice the dough is kind of making this work surface non-stick all on its own. Some of this flour has migrated onto the work surface and it's kind of made a nice little dry non-stick surface right there. So we can actually just go around this. As we continue to work, this dough is less and less willing to get stuck on things. So what we're doing here is developing the gluten that's in the flour. These little gluten molecules want to line up with each other, which makes the structure that traps the gas from the yeast and gives us a nice rise. Again, if it gets sticky, just kind of rub that off your hands. A little more flour. And away we go. As we're kneading, what we're trying to accomplish is getting this gluten to form. So to determine whether that's happening, we've been at this for about 5 minutes, which is a pretty good time for a knead. So we're just going to take the sides of our hands, palms up, and just push them under the dough ball and turn it. And tuck the outside under the middle, and that will make the top kind of stretch out. And then after we've kind of made it into a nice ball, I'm going to take a couple of fingers and gently press, and that should spring back, which tells us the gluten's developing nicely, and it's time to put this down for a rest. So back into the bowl it goes, and we take our plastic wrap that we've prepared with a little light greasing, butter or cooking spray, whatever you prefer. Just kind of gently cover the bowl. Now this is instant yeast, so it just needs to rest for 10 minutes. Active dry yeast, this is where the first rise would take place. So we're just going to set this aside, give it 10 minutes, and come back. Okay, our dough has had a nice 10-minute nap. You notice I didn't clean up my work area at all because this is still useful for turning this out and forming the loaf. So I'm going to give it a little sprinkle, just enough to keep the dough ball from sticking to the work surface. And we're just going to flip it over and let's see if it comes out on its own. Sometimes gravity will do it, but if it needs a little encouragement, I have a bowl scraper. You could use a spoon or something similar to just kind of get it out of there, get it to detach from the bowl. Some folks recommend using spraying the inside of the bowl with cooking spray before you put the dough ball in there so it'll release. I don't like to do that because in my opinion it makes it harder to form the loaf when you're at this stage. I'm just going to turn this around a little bit, give it a little pat. Now this is instant yeast, excuse me. So it had a 10-minute rest. Active dry yeast would have had a rise, and you'd just be punching it down gently, just kind of make a little rectangular shape like this. Take the top of the dough and pull it back down about 2/3 of the way, and then take the side of your hand and just seal the edge down like that. And then spin it 180. Do the same thing in the other direction. This time about halfway over. Press that down so. And then grab your pan that you've already prepared with butter, cooking spray, whatever you like to grease it with. And we'll take the ends and fold them up like this. Roll the whole thing over so it's like a cat. It's kind of like holding a cat. And settle it in the pan. It's going to look something like that. Take your flat hand and just kind of gently press it down. You can use the back of your hand just as well. Kind of what you want to do is evenly distribute the dough in the pan like so. And then the plastic wrap that you saved off the dough ball will just loosely drape across there. I like to, if you've got a granite or quartz countertop, I like to put a pot holder over there to insulate the pan from the heat soak that will result when this sits on the counter, pulling the heat out of the dough ball. So I just put this under there to keep it warm, and we're going to let that rise until the top of the dough is roughly 1 inch over the top of the pan. At this point, we preheat our oven to 375. Okay, it's been about 25 minutes since we put this loaf down in the pan. And as you can see, it's come quite up over the top of the pan, about 1 inch. So we're going to uncover this. And it's ready to go in the oven. Isn't that pretty? We'll bake this at 375 for 40 minutes. And when we put it in the oven, we have the bottom of our broiler pan, a shelf below where the bread will sit, and we're going to put 1 cup of hot tap water into this preheated broiler pan, which will create steam in the oven while this bakes, which will help make the crust tender and firm. Here we go. Okay, it's been 40 minutes at 375. Let's take it out of the oven and see what we have. That will do nicely. Got a nice shape to the top, nice and golden brown. I believe that will do quite well. So we'll let that cool on the rack for 30 minutes. And then we'll put it in this handy bread box that we have, which is vented on one end, and that will allow it to cool for 2 hours minimum before slicing, and that'll retain the moisture so that it will be not get too crusty on the outside. And that is a loaf of bread from start to finish. Bon appetit.